So tier 2, 5th overall, we're talking about none other than Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty gets ball, he sees hole, he runs through hole, and scores touchdown. Okay? Perfect. Yes, guys, the NFL draft is over. All of the rookies have a landing spot. And with that being said, we can begin putting together rankings for Fantasy Football 2025. That's exactly what we're going to do today, beginning with the RB position. And that starts in New England. Okay, so Trevion Henderson is drafted to the Patriots. Over 1,200 rush yards on the ground and 19 touchdowns. 667 total touches, 0 fumbles. In this class of 2025 RBs, he is the only RB with all of, 1,000 rush yards, 200 receiving yards, and 7+ yards per carry. My comparison is a Breece Hall, kind of that smooth, patient runner with burst who can catch as well. Going to be interesting during draft season. I think we can get some early season value from Ramondre, and later in the season, some keeper value and playoff value for fantasy, potentially from Trevion. All right, moving right along with these guys later in the rankings, I'm kind of going to rapid fire them. And the next guy is pretty interesting. It is RJ Harvey. So in 2024, amongst all college RBs, 5th most rushing yards at over 1,500, 3rd most touchdowns, 25 touchdowns, and 150+ total yards per game. 3 straight years in college with 200+ receiving yards, 220+ rush attempts, and 6.3+ yards per carry. His play style comp is Elijah Mitchell, just a guy who can really do it all. Now, a lot of people are very excited about RJ Harvey going to the Broncos because when we look at the Broncos depth chart for running backs, we have Jaleel McLaughlin, who is really just a glorified 3rd down back. Then we have Audric Estime, a monster from Notre Dame, a thumper. And then, Blake Watson, Michael Burton, Tyler Beatty. These guys are, to put it lightly, 2nd and 3rd stringers. So RJ Harvey is the most well-rounded back. The only thing I am concerned with, is Sean Payton actually going to give him the workload? I'll be interested to see how early they give RJ Harvey the work. If they do, he's obviously going to be inside the top 24 running backs. In terms of early opportunities, running backs that are age 24, the time they're drafted, see less opportunities in their first 2 seasons than RBs aged 22, 23. All right, Caleb Johnson is up next at RB 28, a guy I want to talk about real quick, just drafted by the Steelers. So in 2024, only played 12 games, but had 1,700 total yards and 23 touchdowns. 2nd amongst RBs in breakaway yards. 4th amongst RBs in yards after contact with over 1,000. He had a 56% breakaway percentage in college in 2024. That would be higher than Ashton Genty's. Quinshon Judkins comes in at RB 27. Now, with Quinshon, first 220+ pound RB since 2003 at the combine with a sub 4.5 40-yard dash and an 11-foot+ broad jump. He is a monster. Okay, during the 40-yard dash, right in that exact 40-yard dash amongst RBs, he had the 2nd fastest 10-yard split and the 2nd fastest 5-yard split. His 9.88 relative athletic score out of 10 is incredible. 96th percentile athletic composite rating, ranked 1st amongst all RBs at the combine, and it was shown where he was drafted to Cleveland. Steps right in as ideally the workhorse back there. RB 27 might just be too low, especially with Nick Chubb as a free agent. So guys, recapping tier 6. Okay. RB 36, Ramondre Stevenson, 35, Trevion Henderson, 34, Travis Etienne Jr., 33, Tyjae Spears, 32, Tony Pollard, 31, Jalen Warren, 30, RJ Harvey, 29, Aaron Jones, 28, Caleb Johnson, 27, Quinshon Judkins. Moving along into tier 5. So tier 5, I'm looking at guys who survived the NFL draft, but we're not overly excited about them. And spoiler alert, we're looking at a guy like Omarion Hampton, who steps into potentially the most run-heavy team in the NFL in the lead role. So we will start here at RB 23 with Javonte Williams. Now, I just put out a tweet at Joe Arico FF on X that says, so be it. I'll be leading the Javonte hype train this season. If you look at the depth chart, we have Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Deuce Vaughn, Hunter Luepke. I mean, that might as well be me. Whoever Hunter Luepke is, it might as well be me. Malik Davis, Jaden Blue, who was just drafted out of Texas, and Phil Maffa, So, I mean, that's 7 names. I think Jaden Blue is really the only one who I worry about potentially stealing work from Javonte. He's most likely going to start the season as the lead RB in Dallas. He's 25 years old. That is a prime age for running backs. Again, age 24 to 27 is the prime. And the offense is good. This is a good offense. You have CeeDee Lamb. You have Dak Prescott. I think he's going to be a value here. If he goes outside that RB2 range, you can draft him as, a second flex or a bench RB. That's what we're talking about. I'll move right along here to RB19. It's going to be Omarion Hampton. Now, speaking of relative athletic scores, Omarion, 9.93 out of 10 at the combine, 14th best, okay, amongst about 2,000 running backs in the last 40 years. He is a good pass catcher, great pure rusher, capable blocker, and in back-to-back years in college, over 300 touches. He really does remind me of Joe Mixon, okay? So tier 5 guys, I'll read you down the rankings here. RB26, DeAndre Swift. RB25, Brian Robinson. RB24, David Montgomery. RB23, Javonte Williams. RB21, James Conner. RB20, Isaiah Pacheco. Big draft survivor, in my opinion. RB19, Omarion Hampton. RB18, Chuba Hubbard in a very crowded Panthers running back room. Was downgraded out of the draft. RB17, Breece Hall. Who knows which Breece we're going to get. And RB16, James Cook. You could argue James Cook should be in this next tier, tier 4. All right, so beginning in tier 4. First guy I'd like to talk about here is Alvin Kamara at RB15. What jumps out to me about Alvin Kamara is the age. Age 29. He is now in his 9th season in the NFL, and quite amazingly, has finished a top 12 running back in 7 of 8 seasons he's played. Truly one of the great fantasy football running backs of all time. We look at the depth chart. We have Alvin, of course. We have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I'm not worried about. Kendre Miller is potentially a little scary. Jordan Mims, no. Valladay, no. And then we have Devin Neal, who is a little scary. But being 29, right? Alvin Kamara has not played a full year of football since 2018, so about 6 years. He's missed at least 1 game. Okay, so it actually makes that top 12 thing a lot more important. So he misses some time. Devin Neal comes in, who is basically almost directly comparable to Alvin Kamara, a 3-down capable back. He looks a lot to me on the field like my GOAT, Travis Etienne. Once we start having these guys, Kendre Miller, who's due for a breakout, maybe, right? Devin Neal, who I think is the second most talented guy on this roster. If Alvin misses a game here, a game there, right? Or if they want to keep him healthy, the team's doing well, right? 50% of snaps for Neal, things like that, I worry, okay? So he's at RB15 for me. Up next is going to be Joe Mixon at RB14. And again, similar to Alvin Kamara, 28 years old. But when we look at this depth chart, a lot less scary, all right? Dameon Pierce, Dare Ogunbowale, same thing as Pierce. Jacob Johnson, J.J. Taylor, Jawar Jordan, British Books, and Woody Marks is an interesting name. Okay, so Woody Marks, 116th overall to the Texans. This is a guy who the deep Dynasty nerds love, and I respect that. It's not me. You're not going to get that on this channel. But he could be potentially scary. But again, I think the Texans love what they got out of Mixon last year. Just looking at his game log here, I mean, in the middle of the season, week 7 through 13, 20 plus opportunities in every one of those games on an offense this year that's going to improve. Okay, so he's borderline RB1. Next up, outside of the top 12 at RB13 is none other than Derrick Henry. Guys, the receiving total last year, 19 catches. I mean, he has gone over 20 catches twice in a season in his career, twice. And he has played every year since 2016. So we look at touchdowns, 16 last year. Second most in his career, tied with 2019. Is he going to repeat that this year? Yeah, he just might. Harbaugh wants to extend him, right? They're rolling with this, and I get it. So I won't be drafting Henry just because I don't want to get caught holding the 31-year-old bag. I don't. Now, if he was a monster catching passes, who those RBs typically have greater longevity, less injury risk, pass catchers, okay, fair enough. But just the way he plays, his play style, and the lack of receiving, even though the touchdowns are there, I'm going to be fading Henry a little bit. I'm lower than consensus a little bit. RB12, Josh Jacobs. RB11 is Jonathan Taylor. Real quick on Jacobs, guys. Jacobs is RB12. Real quick on him. Very happy with what we saw last year. He is their workhorse. So again, he'll be slept on in drafts, right? But scoop him up in the second, third round of single QB leagues, and you probably have yourself an RB1 on a good offense. And Taylor, Taylor is my RB11. He finished the season incredibly strong. Back-to-back games here, week 17 and 18, with over 36 opportunities in both of those games. Pretty incredible. We look at his fantasy rank. He has not played a full season since 2021, so that's 3 years now of not playing a full season. With that being said, he's in the prime age window, 24 through 27. He's 26 years old. I mean, we're talking week 16, 39.8 points, winning leagues last year. But these other games where he doesn't get the opportunities, right? 11 carries, 0 targets in week 12 against Detroit. It's like, so if they figure out the QB situation where they can actually be in games, right? If Daniel Jones comes in and is good, it's a big if, Taylor can be that staple piece in the offense and be pretty valuable. RB10, I have Kenneth Walker with the new offensive coordinator, Kubiak, coming in. I'm pretty excited about him. And RB9, I have Bucky Irving. Again, with Bucky, I'm a little worried about just how many RBs and how many weapons in total in the offense. I mean, they just brought in Egbuka. I mean, they now have 4 wide receivers who can be wide receiver 2s or better on any team. And Rachaad White, I don't know. And Liam Cohen's leaving, so he's in this tier, Bucky, even though he's at the top of the tier at RB9 with these other guys. So again, tier 4 guys, RB15, Alvin Kamara, RB14, Joe Mixon, RB13, Henry, RB12, Josh Jacobs, RB11, Jonathan Taylor, RB10, Ken Walker, RB9, Bucky Irving. All right, moving into tier 3, it's going to get fun here real quick. So guys, Kyren Williams, major draft day winner, okay? You rarely find a game where Kyren does not see at least 80% of snaps. In this season last year, 2024, if we count the games, he had 79% of snaps or more. There was only one game. So 15 out of 16 games, he had over 79% of snaps. Back-to-back seasons with 12 or more touchdowns on the ground. Back-to-back seasons as PPR, RB7. I'm in on Kyren, and he's now entering the prime age window for fantasy production at age 24. I'm right back in. Next up is Chase Brown. So Chase Brown, last year, yes, you heard that right. Chase Brown, RB7, okay? Above the likes of Derrick Henry for me. Absolutely. Last year, full-time role here, weeks 9 through 17 for Chase Brown. He had 24 total opportunities per game, 24 plus. 85% of snaps played. He had averaged 20.6 PPR points, and he was the RB3. I have him as a top 8 RB. Like I said, he is my RB7. Second round or later in these single QB drafts, I think it's a steal. I think this is a guy where you can go wide receiver in round 1, come back in round 2, and get an RB1 right away. Next up, RB6 to round out the tier is Devon Achane. So he played 11 games with Tua at QB. The rest were a mixture of QBs while Tua was injured. With Tua, 22.6 fantasy points per game. That was the most amongst all running backs. Saquon Barkley was second with 22.2, so a full 0.4 more points per game than Barkley with Tua. An elite metric of 1.03 fantasy points per touch. That is my favorite metric. It's one I create. Okay, every time he touched the ball, you could just average that out to over 1 fantasy point. Any running back who does that, they are in elite category if you're over 1. Now, moving into tier 2. This is where some discussions will have to begin taking place, okay? So tier 2, 5th overall, we're talking about none other than Ashton Jeanty. For my Dynasty folk out there, the clear 101 in 2024, he led all running backs in missed tackles forced, yards after contact, rush attempts, rush yards, rush touchdowns. The player comp is none other than LaDainian Tomlinson. 131 rushing yards away from the all-time FBS rushing record set by Barry Sanders. Ever heard of him? So he'll be 5th overall. Goes to, on my big board of running backs, goes to the Raiders, where Pete Carroll is eager to give running backs some work on the goal line, the 1-yard line. Ashton Jeanty gets ball. He sees hole. He runs through hole and scores touchdown. Okay? Perfect. Now, RB4. Let's begin a dialogue here. My RB4 is Saquon Barkley. For those of you listening, as opposed to watching, you might be a little surprised. For those of you watching, you've been probably wanting me to address this for a few moments now as it's been on the screen. But Saquon Barkley, yes, is my RB4. Yeah, not my undisputed RB1, okay? Not my undisputed RB1. Let's discuss running backs who lead the league in total touches and how they do the following year. So last year, Barkley led the league, right? Led all RBs in total touches. Only 2 of the past 12 running back touch leaders have finished top 12 at the position the following year. Barkley is now 28. That is past the prime window for fantasy production. And by the way, NFL production and fantasy production are very different, right? You might turn on your TV and see Saquon Barkley in the Super Bowl next year scoring a touchdown or two. It's very different than being very good for fantasy football. To ignore history, to ignore historical trends, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Now, do I have Saquon outside of my top 12 RBs? Is he a not draft for me? Avoid at all costs? Absolutely not. He's my RB4. He's my RB4 in the same tier as my RB3 and 5. All right, so everybody relax. Now, my RB3, speaking of the man himself, is Christian McCaffrey. Now, you might be saying, well, you're fading Derrick Henry a little bit here. You're clearly fading Saquon Barkley just based on, I guess, injury risk or age or trends. Correct. But why don't you apply that knowledge to Christian McCaffrey? Good question. This is a valid question, fellow viewer. I'll explain you the reason. So with McCaffrey, we're simply discussing a different type of fantasy running back. We're discussing potentially the greatest fantasy running back of all time. The last 4 times that he has played 16 or more games in a season, he has been either RB1 or either RB2, excluding his rookie year, of course, right? So that begins in 2018, RB2, 16 games. 2019, the year after that, RB1, 16 games. Injured in 2020, injured in 2021, written off for fantasy. 2022, 17 games RB2. 2023, 16 games RB1. So literally, if he misses 1 game or less, he will be a top 2 fantasy running back. I'm predicting that yet again. Again, since he's outside of the age, right, or we're talking about 24 to 27 being prime, since he's outside of that window, I have him ranked, as RB3. But we really need to discuss him as the greatest running back of all time for fantasy football purposes. Most PPR points scored in a single season by a running back. LT in 2006 has the record with 481. 10 points less than that, or just under 10 points less than that in 2019 is McCaffrey at 471. Then you have Marshall Faulk, Priest Holmes, and LT again as the 5th most here in 443. For reference, guys, Barkley, Gibbs, guys from last year didn't even touch 400. All right. So when we talk about the GOAT fantasy running back, Marshall Faulk, Priest Holmes, LT, McCaffrey, those are the names. Faulk and Holmes are the only 2 running backs to post back-to-back PPR RB1 seasons. So that's, again, another argument against Barkley is it's so hard to go back-to-back RB1 for PPR. If you include week 18, Barkley is the PPR RB1 last year. If you don't, Gibbs is. So we'll see. CMC in 2018 was only 2 points total on the season from joining Faulk and Holmes as RB1 back-to-back years PPR. Rookie Saquon took it from him by literally, again, guys, less than 2 points on the entire season. LT has the most top 2 finishes with 5. CMC is next with 4. But LT played 4 more years. But the moral of the story is if CMC were to add 1 more RB1 overall season to his career before retiring, even a top 2 season, he would be, in my view, the greatest PPR running back for fantasy football all time. He is reportedly fully healthy. So until I hear otherwise, he will be my RB3. Now getting into tier 2 is very simple here. It's very simple here. My RB2 is Jahmyr Gibbs, who, a lot of people don't realize this, RB1 in PPR last year. But what about David Montgomery? Yep. What about David Montgomery? Remember that from a year ago. And that's not taking anything away from David Montgomery. Very good running back. Very good for fantasy. But I do remember, right, when you guys self-reported a lack of ball knowledge for saying, what about David Montgomery when this young man was entering year 2 in the league? There's nothing to talk about here, guys. He is literally Christian McCaffrey light on the best offense in the league. Now, without Ben Johnson, we will see. But age 23, perfect. Over 250 attempts on the ground last year. Over 50 receptions in both of his seasons. And there you have it. And finally, guys, my RB1 overall is none other than Bijan Robinson, heading into his 3rd year in the league, very quietly finished as the PPR RB3 last season. And we saw Michael Penix take over in the late part of the season, okay? After the bye for Bijan Robinson, I will read you the total rushing opportunities he had per game. 26 in week 13. Next game, 22. Then 22. Then 22. Then 17 with 5 targets. Then 28 in week 18 with 5 targets. So the team, crazy, figured out that Bijan Robinson is the real deal. In terms of risk, he has the least risk amongst basically every running back I've mentioned here. I don't want to hear Tyler Algier discussions in chat right now. If we look at Algier, surpassed 30% of snaps 0 times in their final 5 games played. I don't care if he scores every once in a while. I don't care if he's in the red zone here and there. I don't care. Bijan Robinson is the #1 RB for fantasy football. That is going to do it, guys, for my top 36 initial draft rankings for fantasy football 2025. If you enjoyed, guys, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below some things I know I'm going to be hearing about Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. Bring it on. If you want to take it to Twitter, @JoeOrico, FF on Twitter. I'll catch you guys next time. Adios.